Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
So today, we're diving into something that feels really personal but is actually shaped by these huge, often invisible forces. I'm talking about the food on our plates. You know, we hear it all the time, right? That what you eat is all about personal responsibility. But is that really the whole story? Not even close. So for this explainer, we're going to lean on the work of Mark Bittman to trace the path our food actually takes to get to us.
Okay, so before we can even talk about the food itself, we have to look at the system that delivers it. And what we're talking about here is this massive, interconnected web of industrial food production and agricultural policy.
Here's a great way to think about it. Picture the whole food system as a giant river. All the really important decisions are made way, way upstream. And whatever happens up there, well, that determines everything that flows down to us. What's in our grocery stores, how much it costs, and yeah, what we end up eating. So what's actually feeding this river? It really boils down to two huge incentives, right at the source: government policy and, you guessed it, corporate profit. Let's dig into the policy side first. I mean, look at this. Our entire agricultural landscape is pretty much dominated by just two crops. Seriously, just corn and soy make up more than half of everything harvested in the US. That's wild.
And this didn't just happen by accident. Oh no. This extreme focus is supercharged by about $19 billion a year in taxpayer subsidies. And guess who that money mostly goes to? The biggest growers of these specific crops.
So now you have all this incredibly cheap corn and soy, and that flows right into the second big incentive: profit. Because, as Bittman lays out, it's just way, way more profitable for a company to take those cheap commodities and turn them into processed, shelf-stable junk food than it is to grow and sell, fresh produce. Okay, so you've got a massive supply of cheap ingredients. What's next? You gotta create the demand. And that's where these really powerful industry marketing boards, which are often, get this, regulated by the USDA, come into play. They launch these enormous campaigns that literally shape our idea of what dinner is supposed to be.
All right, so we've seen what's happening upstream. Now let's follow that river all the way down to us. What happens when all these incentives finally reach the end of the line? The consumer.
Well, if you look at the data from the last 50 years or so, the pattern is it's undeniable. We are eating more and more meat, fats, oils, and caloric sweeteners. The trend line just keeps going up.
And these changes in our diet, they've had some really serious consequences for public health. The impact is pretty staggering, actually. Just since 1991, obesity rates in the US have shot up by 75%. That's huge.
The cost to our health is one thing, but the environmental toll is just as massive. Think about it. Industrial livestock production, which is basically fueled by all that subsidized corn and soy we talked about, is responsible for more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector combined.
Now, it's really important to understand that this isn't just a simple A to B to C chain. No, it's way more powerful than that. It's a self-reinforcing loop, which is why it's so hard to break.
Let's walk through it. Policy subsidizes the cheap grains. Industry uses those grains to make super profitable processed foods. Then, marketing gets us to eat those foods. That leads to worse public health outcomes. And then, the profits from selling all that processed food get funneled right back into lobbying to keep the exact same policies in place. See? It's a perfect, closed loop.
And this brings us to the most important point. When we just blame individuals for their food choices, telling them to eat better or have more willpower, that is a crisis in perception. It completely ignores the powerful, very intentionally designed system that's shaping the choices we have in the first place. So if we zoom out one last time, we can see that this whole food system isn't just operating in a vacuum. Nope, it's deeply tied into some of the biggest challenges we face on a global scale.
I mean, it's a huge driver of climate change through its emissions. It's blowing up our healthcare costs. It's causing massive environmental damage like deforestation. And it plays a huge role in shaping global trade. It's connected to everything.
And seeing the whole map like this is so important because the consequences are just enormous. I mean, the cost of diet-related illnesses alone is estimated at $840 billion every year. So that leads us to the big question, right? Now that we see the system, now that we've followed the river all the way from its source, what does real choice even look like? Understanding the structure, well, that's the absolute first step toward any kind of real clarity, and maybe, just maybe, starting to imagine some real alternatives.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.